From Lupita Nyong'o keeping things quiet
to Robert Mitchum making things loud.
This week we'll be reviewing A Quiet Place Day 1, Spider-Man 2 and The Night of the Hunter.
This is The Film Angle. Welcome to The Film Angle, a podcast where we dive deep into the latest releases and unearth the classics to better our cinephilic curiosity. I'm Kris.
And I'm Alex.
Let's get into it.
How have you been, Kris?
Hello, Alex. Yes, I have been very well, blah, blah, blah. I know this is like, let's get all the pretension out of the way, shall we?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I know I catch up with you, but sometimes, our listeners might want to know what you've been up to as well.
I know, it's so funny. Sometimes you have to like pretend that we just haven't been talking for the last 20 minutes before the episode started.
Yeah, desperately trying to figure out what we're talking about. No, we do. We're pretty good at planning this stuff now. We've gotten better.
Oh yeah,
we're very in tune.
We're better at planning it than actually turning up for the gig sometimes.
we're a little Google Doc with notes going, that we can both see. It's great. We're I think that's the sign of a professional.
Exactly. I mean, the name of the file hasn't changed in months, but it updates every week.
Yeah.
It's a system that works for us anyway. But yeah, absolutely. Alex, I'm keeping very well. Sun's shining. It's a beautiful day. The dogs sleep in the corner, and we got some big movies to talk about this week. Some old, some new. I'm a bit excited about this episode because there's one particular film two particular films that here I really really love. So it'd be good to get into it with you.
Yeah, we don't often talk like re-releases, do we? But this seemed like a big enough one to talk about, and I think anybody who knows me outside of the podcast knows that I'm a very big Spider-Man fan. So, getting to see Spider-Man 2 on the big screen, I was very happy.
There was an episode of The Film Angle where you were in a Spider-Man morph suit.
I know, I did think of turning up again, but it is like 28 degrees outside, so I didn't fancy it. I'll tell you what I am wearing, though. I am wearing Spider-Man socks.
Oh, I thought you were going to say pants or panties. Let's see the socks then. Can you get them up, or can you reach that high if you're like on the camera?
I can. No, can I? I don't know. This isn't ideal podcast listening, I guess.
But I can say if it's good. Oh, I was expecting something a bit more jazzy. It's just Spider-Man's face, but it's cool. It's still on. It's still on brand.
I have a few different pairs. I have like bright red ones with the logo on.
You got every kind. Yeah. Okay. I haven't got Spider-Man socks, but I am also a really big fan of Spider-Man 2. I saw this thing back in 2004 in the cinemas with my grandmother. And I just remember being blown away. Went straight to Burger King afterwards. I got the Doc Ock toy. I had the PS2 game, had the Game Boy game. Everybody. I think everybody our age group was just like obsessed with this movie.
Well, shall we review Spider-Man 2 first, or
I think we're warming up into it. Yeah, I think we should start that.
Up into it. Let's do it then. Let's jump into Spider-Man 2. Let's do it.
So, Alex, this was your first time watching it on the big screen, even though like Spider-Man is the superhero for you, right?
That's correct. The only Sam Raimi Spider-Man film I saw on the big screen was Spider-Man 3 in the end. Mm-hmm. So I was living in Germany at the time. I was a big fan of the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. I remember we went to the American PX, which was on one of the American army bases in Germany. And they had the DVD of Spider-Man, which was a lot earlier than we would usually get it. I guess US releases were different to the UK, European, German releases. And I remember I was just a little too young, even though that brought in the 12A certificate. And I think my parents, the only way we could play it was on the computer. And I remember my parents watching it first to make sure that it was okay for me to watch. So that was how I watched Spider-Man 1. And then Spider-Man 2 was a bootleg DVD from probably Kosovo. So like there's a big kind of like pirate DVD market in war zone countries, and my dad was in the military. So yeah, one of the different places he went, there you could get loads of kind of pirated DVDs. And I'm not sure if it was him or a friend of mine, because obviously we were all all our dads were soldiers when we were living out there, or mums as well. Yeah, so I can't remember if it was a friend or my own copy of it, but I do remember buying the actual proper DVD later on. And then I do have like the Blu-ray collection now and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I remember watching it. There's people walking in front of the screen. It was that kind of one, but I remember being so blown away.
We didn't care about that when we were kids, so did we? Like, no, but
not
like,
at all.
No, I think I was still doing up until 2010. I was still watching movies that way. It was awful.
It was. But I knew straight away that it was something special, because I think I remember finishing it and then restarting it immediately, just being like absolutely blown away. And it helped as well. I think Doc Ock was my favorite like villain from the cartoon. And I remember specifically, probably like a year in advance or whatever, I think it was like a Toxic magazine. I think it was called Toxic, which had the tentacles on the front, and it was like previewing Spider-Man 2, and I was like, oh my god, they're doing Doc Ock. So like losing my mind. But yeah, the English releases of films were just like, you'd either get a few in German cinemas and they would be for like a week and they'd do it in English, or you had to wait until it came to the military cinema, which sometimes took months and months and months. So yeah, never got around to watching that one in the cinema, but I did. Yeah, Spider-Man 3 was the first one. Went to in the first week with a friend to watch that in a German cinema with English language. But yeah, again, just absolutely hyped. But like you, I had the game as well. Love Spider-Man 2 game, so good.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how it would hold up now, but yeah, the game was like, I remember there was like a kid in our class who brought in the game the day it came out, and everybody was just like hounding him to like get a go at it, or everybody was, it was that big of a thing. But
the web swing was like revolutionary, wasn't it? It was just like insane.
Yeah, like the new Spider-Man games kind of just use that same formula, don't they? I mean, just obviously to a better degree, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I do still have the PlayStation 2 version, and I think it holds up, like in terms of being a playable game, like obviously graphic wise and all that kind of stuff.
Does that play? Can you put that in your new PlayStation and that plays on the PlayStation 5? Does that work?
No, I don't think you can do it on the PlayStation 5. I could do it on my old PlayStation 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, yeah, I keep watching clips of it all the time. Like, oh, I'd love to just revisit that one time again. But yeah, Spider-Man was just like, when the whole 2000s, it was just so big. I mean, was Tobey Maguire, by the time Spider-Man 2 came out, was he the highest paid actor at that time? Was he?
Potentially, yeah. It was pretty huge. It was the highest grossing film ever, or had like the highest grossing weekend of all time.
Even bigger than Spider-Man 3?
No, I just mean like at the time.
Oh yeah, sure.
Spider-Man films were just absolutely smashing records because everybody wanted to go see it.
So what makes Spider-Man 2 then, like, for a lot of people, not just us, well, I would probably say for me it is still to date, and this is 20 years old now, this film, the most successful adaptation of the comic book genre I've seen the screen that really works for me. Forget everything that Marvel sort of released. Since it started its old big monolithic run in 2008 with Iron Man. This one still is the crown jewel in Marvel's cap for me. What is it about it?
I think it is a kind of lack of fear for taking on the genre of a comic book film and making it comic booky. I think it's an idea that it can be like weird and wacky, but also really earnest and sincere at the same time. And just an absolute joy to watch. Like every scene is fun, has a gag, but not like your kind of constant quipping gags that you get from an MCU film. Even though like some of those really work, like your Guardians and your original Avengers, like that works in certain films.
Mm-hmm.
But here it just seems to be a lot more kind of playful visual gags. Sam Raimi, the director, just seems really happy to just kind of like let the camera do some really crazy things. Some of the transitions in this film are like insane. I feel like you just wouldn't get away with it nowadays, because I feel like there was a couple of weird transitions in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which people were like really baffled by. But it was just like old school Sam Raimi doing like weird
Yeah,
montages and stuff. But yeah, I think there's something so. I think there's something so endearing about Tobey Maguire's performance as Peter Parker here.
100%. Yeah,
He
yeah.
really draws you in. He is a bit of a loser, like there is no doubt. He's not nearly as handsome as Andrew Garfield or Tom Holland, and he is a bit just kind of, I don't want to say pathetic, because he's definitely not, but he truly is struggling in this film. And this film is a bit of a downer. It's all about how you truly can't balance your life as a normal human being with your life as Spider-Man. And it's quite a sad film for the most part, I would say. Like the whole film just like Peter Parker's just a punching bag the whole film. Nothing
yeah.
goes right for him.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, he is a punching bag. He can't even get a martini at a party without somebody else taking it before him. He constantly is just getting tripped up, or just getting bullied in some sort of way. He can't even he tries everything in his power to kind of make every relationship in his life kind of work, but there's such a helplessness when you're watching the film, because this guy is trying, and you're just seeing it. Like, something in Maguire's performance, it's the way he uses his voice always really strikes me. Like, when he's Peter Parker, he's always quite like within himself whenever he speaks. He's very soft spoken, and it's just like an injured puppy sometimes, and he looks spaced out sometimes. He looks like his head is in 10 different places at once, which is really, really good. And obviously battle that with like scenes with Kirsten Dunst, who is fantastic in this too. She's got this like real like old Hollywood actress quality to her in this film that I really love. And it's heartbreaking. Like, it's very simple. He wants to tell her, you can easily tell her at any moment, and all those issues that he has could be fixed, but the repercussions for that could be absolutely, astronomical. But yeah, it's just everybody in this film really works. I think Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, or Dr. Octavius, is probably one of the best superhero villains of all time. He is like the proper 3-dimensional villain, the one who they put the legwork really early on, where you actually really fall in love with this guy, the scientist guy, and his wife and his goals, and you could see him as being this mentor figure for Peter potentially, and they always have this sort of father son thing kind of going on. And whenever it all goes to hell, it's quite upsetting, and the movie just really, really hones in on that performance brilliantly. Just a villain you really enjoy. Like, he can be funny at times too. Like, he's got little moments, and he's very playful. I mean, it should be ridiculous. I mean, J. Jonah Jameson himself says, oh, how ironic that a guy with 8 limbs is called Dr. Octavius. And it should be really silly. And a lot of things in this film should be really, really silly. But the earnestness is so well captured and woven throughout the film that you can't just, it's the perfect way to do this sort of thing. And, there's nothing, I have no notes. It's just so beautiful. I mean, the train sequence, got to be the greatest scene to any superhero film I've ever seen. That scene is both exciting, really creative, visually just stunning. Like, the transitions when Peter's swinging through the city and then reflects on Dr. Octopus's like his glasses, and the transitions into the scene.
Brilliant transition.
So cool, man. And then
silly, so cool.
and the Danny Elfman score is just like absolutely guns blazing. And then the heartbreaking. It's great. Sorry. No, go ahead. I mean, it's just the scene whenever the citizens carry him up in the middle of the train car, and he's demasked, and they promised not to tell his identity. Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Well, I think that scene and the whole film really kind of encapsulates what Spider-Man is as a character and why so many people love him.
Mhm.
This idea that he is just kind of like the everyman hero, very local to New York. I know he has since been to space now, but in the early days of the comics, he didn't leave New York. He was just doing his thing.
Yeah.
Small time crime, saving people, and Sam Raimi completely understands how to make New York feel like a living, breathing place within this film with quirky characters. And like you said, who are there also to support Spider-Man when needed. That Danny Elfman score though, like you mentioned, because I hadn't seen this in the cinema before, and obviously it's been a while since Spider-Man 3 came out. I don't fully remember. I was quite young when that all happened, but as soon as the opening credits came on, and that score's just going, I immediately just had like a really emotional reaction to it. And I think the first 30 minutes of the film, there was something like profoundly quite, I don't know, magical about the experience of, I didn't realize how much it was going to hit me that I was seeing this for the first time, big and loud. And it does play differently. Like, I think a lot of the action plays differently in terms of it's filmed. I hadn't realized just like quite how much action is filmed in close up sometimes, and how like that's quite jarring, but in a really interesting way.
Which
And
makes up for its limitations in its computer. I think CGI, it has dated a little bit in certain sections.
Oh yeah.
But the way it's filmed and the franticness of the motion and like how comic booky it is, makes that not really matter.
No. Plus, we'll get into it in a second, but like Spider-Man is not in it as much as you think. But I sat through the first 30 minutes of this film a little doughy-eyed, a little weepy. It was all looking a little bit blurry for a minute. I was surprised to find myself like that. I thought it would be the train sequence only that did that to me, because that's the one that usually does anyway. But just like for 30 minutes, I was just like, I forgot how good this is. And I think we've been to the cinema a lot recently and just seen films that keep disappointing me, and it was just nice to see something that was just like, they don't make them like this anymore. And I'm so sad that they probably will never make a superhero film like this anymore. So self-contained, so just comic booky, but in a really sincere way. But Spider-Man, he's not in it a lot.
No, it's 60% drama, Peter balancing all these relationships. He plays Aunt May again. You reminded me,
Rosemary Harris.
Rosemary Harris. She is an absolute scene stealer in this. She gets a couple of, she only gets a couple of scenes, but when she's in it, she has these monologues that are just absolute moments that really anchor what the film is about. And that sort of thing that the audience kind of 50-50 knows that she kind of has an inkling of who Peter really, really is, or doesn't want to believe, or I think that's always in the back of your mind watching this with all the characters, and never maybe that's never explicitly told, but you feel like everybody knows that something is a little bit like off about Peter, and then there's something more to him just being tardy and late for things, and that's really well done. But she is incredible. But that's the thing; it's like the perfectly cast film. Everybody knows exactly what the assignment is. And what really struck me this time was the screenplay. When people just speak in this film, it's very actually quite simple. And there's not a lot of expo. It's just people kind of clearly stating, right, this is what I want, or this is what I'm lacking. This is where I need to get to here and there. And it just moves the plot forward without ever sacrificing the emotion, because the emotion is carried out through score and visual. And the acting, so it's great. It's over 2 hours, but there's no fluff in this. It's just zips along, no pun intended there. But it's a great film. It's a masterpiece of the genre. I think that still really holds up well. Yeah. Will leave you doughy eyed by the end of it, and it's just it's great. Like I can watch it. I could watch it again right now.
Yeah, same. I'd love to go back to the cinema and watch it again if I had time. But you're right though. Like there's no scene that's boring in this, and I was thinking this throughout, like watching it again. Each scene I'd be like, oh yes, this scene. This scene's great. Like even the quieter scenes have a moment in them, which is just like either it's a visual flair, a gag, a line, a music moment where you're just like, oh, this is great. This is great. And I kept forgetting how many good scenes are in this. You know,
The
even down
raindrops,
to
the
the
raindrops keep falling on
raindrops
my head.
scene.
Secrets is so funny.
Yeah, with the freeze frame,
The freeze
perfect.
frame.
It's just beautiful. Peter Parker telling Aunt May about what happened on the night of Uncle Ben's death is just heartbreaking, and her
Oh,
response to that a few scenes later, incredible.
and a
When he
stillness
has to
to the
go,
filmmaking like that doesn't exist in superhero films now. Like there's just a wide frame of that kitchen with him and May sharing that news together, where like this the camera just stays stationary for about half a minute to maybe a minute. It just like it's you know it's just beautiful. It just lets the emotion play out naturally. Don't get that anymore.
yeah, even like cheesy scenes where you know you have him contemplating whether to leave Spider-Man behind, and then having this kind of out of body experience talking to Uncle Ben about putting down the mantle and giving up
Hmm.
on the great powers comes great responsibility. Like
Hmm.
that is great, even though that's kind of corny in a way, but it doesn't treat it as such.
Or what
When
about
he's
the bank scene where like Doc Ock is literally breaking into the vault and he's literally just grabbing and throwing money bags of like dollar
yes.
signs? How like cartoony is that? I mean, I don't think banks have that, but
No, just a
it really
vault in the
works
middle
here.
of the bank. So good. And then Rosemary Harris getting to have that, you know, the part where she plays in that in the action scene and she
Hmm.
gets to smack him around the head at one point. And that weird little moment when Spider-Man saves her and they come to the ground and he says like, "Oh, we really showed him," and she goes, "What do you mean we?" And he just goes, "Oh." And I just like it's such a weird moment. I love it.
It is great.
The fire, you know, yeah, every Spider-Man film I think has a building on fire, and this
Yeah,
time Peter Parker has to go in like half powered up, half not really.
yeah.
And the kid saves him at one point, like drags him up, and it is so sweet. It's such a
Yes.
sweet moment.
It is really sweet, and I love it when he hands her back to her parents and doesn't even like stop to acknowledge them. Like that's what really like is a good thing about Spider-Man and Peter Parker too is selflessness is that he hands her over to the parents and doesn't even like he just runs on and doesn't even stop to get thanked. And I really like that little touch too.
Yeah, it's kind of like his responsibility is also his burden. He just has
Yeah,
to do it. It's so
yeah.
good. The
The
scene
fire
with
scene in the first movie is like really scary. I always remember that, like when
yes.
with Green Goblin in the cupboard. Yeah, it always scared me as a kid.
Talking of scary, the scene where Doc Ock's in the hospital
Oh,
and it's
so
filmed
good.
like a horror film, and you got
Straight
the
out of the Evil Dead, isn't
fingernails
it?
scraping along the floor. Just
Hmm.
absolutely kind of a brilliant flair from Sam Raimi, who's obviously his history is in those kinds of very kind of low budget horror films.
Yeah,
Very Evil Dead with the point of view of the
of the
tentacles and
tentacles.
stuff like
Yeah,
that. The
yeah.
chainsaw.
Oh, so good. I mean, the tentacles themselves are a genius piece of production design. They just look so good. Like even now, they just look perfect. Like you couldn't make everything they get so right with Doc Ock with like his costuming. Like his costume evolves throughout the movie too. Like whenever he escapes from the hospital, he's got just like a hospital tunic wrapped around his belt, and then he gets to the barge and he's like rags, and then that evolves into like this big massive heavy trench jacket. His
Mm.
glasses like go through about 5 different iterations in this film, and I just like it's so the production is so well done. Like even the pizza boxes at the start of the film, and like Peter finally delivers them, and they're all like crumpled looking, and like everything is just the little things really go a long way. And it sounds
100%.
silly and nerdy, but you notice it when you watch the film, and it adds that little like layer of authenticity, which kind of goes really hand in hand with the whole New York being authentic thing. I don't know. It really just everything is thought about. It's a miracle because Sam Raimi does not like wasn't his bread and butter. Like Spider-Man 1, the film before this, was just like he'd never done anything that scale before. He had always been like a lower budget guy, and the fact that he managed to make two incredible, like three, you can argue. I know people have it, people love it or hate it,
I
but
can
one and
argue.
two,
I can argue. Three is great. Three is like it's the weakest, but three is great.
three, yeah, it's just a shame because you know what it could be, and I think if that was just a Sandman movie, I think it'd be pretty great. Um, but I don't know if you agree with that one, but I really love Sandman, and I really
Well,
like
you have the setup in this film for
Harry.
Harry
Yeah,
Osborn's Green Goblin Goblin Jr., as he is referred to at one point during Spider-Man 3. So I think like you do have to pay that off a little bit.
Sure.
But I think, we are forgetting the other villain in that, which is Venom. So maybe it could have just been Sandman and Green Goblin. And
they could have made that work.
We could have forgotten about Venom. But again, it made so much money and they wanted to keep making money, and more people got their hands on it, and we're like, nope, we have to do this next. We have to keep making more money. It's very annoying. I don't know if you've seen all the kind of different like storyboards and stuff they had ready for Spider-Man 4.
Yes,
like different characters they were going to bring in. And
were they going to do? He's the crocodile guy.
Oh, the Lizard. I'm not sure if the Lizard was planned for Spider-Man 4, but obviously we have Kurt Connors there, so like he was a character, so I'm sure they would have done that at some point. But they were going to do the Vulture, and I think it was going to be John Malkovich, who was being cast as the Vulture. They had a very early scene where we had Mysterio, because what's the guy who plays the Usher, and he's in all the Evil Dead films. What's his name?
Bruce Campbell.
Bruce Campbell. Bruce Campbell is in every film as like a different character, and it was going to be revealed in Spider-Man 4 as he was going to be Mysterio for a quick gag as he was being like arrested by Spider-Man.
You think about it, like if Spider-Man 3 really worked and they made Spider-Man 4, would that potentially have like delayed the timeline of Kevin Feige's universe ever starting? And that would have made, because Spider-Man 3 was 2007, the year before Iron Man. Could that could have altered the entire timeline of what we know Marvel to be now? Like you can't help but think of those implications. But
yeah, well, it probably just would have ended up being a case of Spider-Man just wouldn't be in the MCU, I imagine. Yeah, and Anne Hathaway probably wouldn't have been Catwoman, because I think she was cast as the Black Cat in Spider-Man 4. So I doubt Nolan would have even considered her for Catwoman in The Dark Knight Rises. So, a few things would have changed. In a way, as much as his films are unfortunately probably like some of the weakest, we wouldn't have seen Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker. Now he plays a very good Spider-Man.
I agree with that. Although the films are like, it didn't really do much for me, but yeah, I mean, they're playing in the cinemas too. I mean, every Spider-Man film is playing chronologically at the minute. So I think so Spider-Man 3 will be playing, at the time of this recording, will be playing next weekend. So I don't know. Spider-Man 2, I had to see. I had to see it. I had to see it with my own eyes, relive that moment I had 20 years ago. It was totally worth it.
Yeah, we're away next weekend, so I can't go see Spider-Man 3 again. And I guess if I had time, maybe I would have watched Spider-Man 1. I'm not as fussed about those, but Spider-Man 2 I really want to see on the big screen, and my God, am I happy I did.
I'm glad you're happy, buddy. Yeah, it's a great film.
Surprisingly moving experience watching that. So
there you go. And even my girlfriend Lauren, she loves it as well. And she's not a fan of superhero films in general. So, that's how you're winning. That's how you're winning.
I think Sam Raimi just knows how to make it was like a high budget B movie, wasn't it? Like the original Spider-Man anyway. It was just like, it was like a B movie with $100 million behind it. And he just made something really special and went on from there. There was always rumors that, because they brought Tobey Maguire back in No Way Home and all that kind of stuff, like Sam Raimi might one day get to direct Spider-Man 4, but those rumors ebb and flow all the time, and I've got a feeling
that would be so unique. I don't know of any franchise that has ever done that, like gone back and like pulled back a previous property and brought it forward. I mean, I guess Star Trek's sort of done it, but
Terminator does all the time.
But but that's still like a legacy sequel. Like you're still, what I mean? It's not like, well, we're pretending that these films don't exist and making a sequel to something that came out 20 years ago. I would be a first, I think. But yeah, I'd say it.
I'd love to catch up with those characters and see Peter Parker in a more mature place, probably as a father, and maybe in the comics he ends up being a teacher for a bit, and I think that would be an interesting place to put it. But yeah, there's such a vibe with these films, which I like.
Even the credits music, the music and the credits is like so.
Yeah, like it must be difficult to recapture that feeling that you get when you watch those films.
Oh well, I mean, we got it. We got Spider-Man too, so we should be happy, right?
Yeah, of course. I'll keep watching it in the cinema. Release it every year.
Well, there you go, guys. Spider-Man 2. You can't watch it in the cinema anymore. You're listening here and you missed it. You missed it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Unless, I don't know, is it playing when? Like, this comes out on a Wednesday. Is it playing Wednesday? Might be playing Wednesday.
Yeah, you
if
might
you're
get
listening to this in the morning, you might be all right.
Run.
The next film we're going to be talking about is A Quiet Place Day One. So this is our new release of, well, not this week. I think it's been out for a couple of weeks now, but we finally got around to watching it. It is the third film in the Quiet Place franchise. This one is no longer a continuation of the Emily Blunt storyline, despite them leaving us on a somewhat of a cliffhanger on A Quiet Place Part 2, I think, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. This time we are back to day one, but this time in New York, one of the loudest cities in the world, on day one of the invasion.
Oh yeah. Isn't the opening like piece of like text on the screen like telling you about how many decibels New York reaches in a second or something like that?
Yes, and like the loudness of New York is like a constant scream or something like that. So, you know, they're setting up the kind of idea behind it straight away. And in this film, we follow Lupita Nyong'o, whose character Samira is a cancer patient who's kind of caught up in the invasion in New York. And she decides that she wants to go and get the last slice of pizza at Patsy's Pizza Place.
Yeah.
And her goal with her cat. And later on in the film, she comes across Joseph Quinn, who plays Eric. And together they kind of have to survive day one, I guess, and overcome their own problems. Is that enough to sustain a Quiet Place film that isn't a direct sequel to the last one? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea to see it, I guess, on a bigger scale. But I don't know if it pulls it off fully.
Look, I quite like the genre of what if scenarios of, you know, disaster films. I think you can do this sort of thing in New York pretty well. I actually quite like the original Cloverfield film. I actually really like that whole sort of Blair Witchy sort of POV of what would a panic moment in a city of that scale look like. I think that's pretty fascinating, and especially, you know, films like Danny Boyle's 28 Days series is really cool for that. But here, I find this whole thing, I'm going to get straight into it here, Alex. I find the whole experience of this film dull. I find it really dull, and quite treacly and saccharine in terms of like how we learn about characters, certain interactions between characters in fraught moments. It all just felt a little bit tacky. But the whole thing is, I never really felt anchored towards these characters. In a way that was fully fleshed out. We get a little bit of backstory for Lupita Nyong'o's character, you know, with later on, actually, about 2/3 into the film, why she is going on this kind of head-scratching pursuit of pizza in the upper end of the city. I mean, it's not like she might not be spelling this wrong for the people listening to the podcast. She wanted to do this before it all broke out in the city. But since it has broke out in the city, and I think she is, you know, she hasn't got long left to live anyway without medication. She thinks, well, I might as well, you know, go out on this bang, which is like doing this thing I set out to do. And then we obviously learn later on why that is. And then she comes across Joseph Quinn's character, and both of them come intertwined because I think the movie kind of makes us believe that they're both right. These two kind of get it. These two are more savvy than everybody else, and they kind of complement each other, and they stick by. And also with the help of the cat. Did you like the cat in here? Did you feel like that was a little bit like an extra contrivance on top of this already kind of contrived film?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like the cat because it was
cat sassy. But, like he is sassy.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess it was kind of like, I don't know. It did feel a bit of a cheap kind of emotional.
Incredibly well behaved and well trained, I must say. That cat
always runs off before a big action scene, so you never have to worry about where the cat is. Occasionally puts the characters in peril, but not by much. But yeah, it was. I don't know. with this, so my kind of previous experience with The Quiet Place was I adore the first one. I think it's great. Had a really good cinema experience watching it in a packed cinema on a huge screen, and not one person made a peep. It was one of those experiences where everybody was just on the same level, and thoroughly enjoyed it. I know it's simple, but I kind of love that it was just like a bit of a gimmick, but it worked, and it worked emotionally very well. And it probably worked emotionally very well because you're watching a family, so it's kind of there because you don't have a lot of talking. It's their connection to each other that draws you in. Whereas here we don't really have a family to follow. We just have kind of one person, and then later two, and you kind of see them reconnecting a little bit. The peril wasn't there. It just never truly felt like any of these characters were in a lot of danger.
Mm-hmm. Disjointed set pieces. It felt like they were kind of sewn together with no really like sort of end goal really in mind.
Yeah. And I guess like my problem with 2, so I should say as well, I didn't like part 2. I thought it felt like an episode of like The Walking Dead, ended with a cliffhanger and everything. I was like, I'm not watching a film here, I'm watching a TV show. And this feels like
comparison, actually. Yeah.
This kind of feels like an episode of a TV show as well. I thought it felt like a bit of a spin-off to show like, oh, this is what happened somewhere else.
It's not visually that very interesting, too. It looks a bit like a TV show, too.
No, and I wondered with it being in New York, and obviously the idea of all the, you know, how loud a city is and all that kind of stuff. I thought, what are you gonna show me that's kind of so different to the first 2 films? And the only thing that they really showed me that was different was like there were lots of creatures, lots of aliens. I was like, okay, is that it? Can you give me something a bit more like groundbreaking, something a little bit more interesting? Because the city clocks on within 5 minutes that you need to shut the hell up. I feel
they have these military helicopters that go above the city with big announcer speakers telling everybody to not make any sound, which is a little bit like startling. That's the thing. I'm not usually a logic person with film. Like film, I feel like, you know, a movie should exist in its own world, have its own rules, and that's fine. It can abide by that. But this film it is all about the rules. This franchise is all about the mechanics of sound, our relationship to it, and the character's relationship to it. And once you've established how one of these creatures receives sound and how it preys upon people based on that, then that is your frame of reference for the entire film and the franchise. But it's so contrary. The film keeps rewriting the rules all the time. One person will be like stepping on like hitting like a little cat bell or something like that, like in the room, and then all hell breaks loose. And then another time, people will be running across the corridor in their floorboard-ridden, creaky apartment, and nobody will hear it.
Yeah,
and then
you'll have thousands of people in the street walking together at the same time.
That was a low point in the film. That was a low point where this whole mass of people walking in silence towards the boat barges that would take them to safety. It reminded me of.
I guess it doesn't go well. So I guess you could say like, all right, logically, yeah, that didn't work. But there was just something about seeing it like, this doesn't make sense. I feel like the filmmakers didn't want you to see the characters relearning the rules, despite the fact that it is another origin film. So like, they were just like, they just need to get up to speed fast because the audience already know what the rules are. So we can't have them learning them. Because they'll get bored, which I guess we would. But at the same time, I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're all very up to speed within 5 minutes as to like how to survive this.
Yeah, could you imagine like you're trying your best to stay quiet in these like high-rise city buildings, and then like this giant helicopter goes above you saying, "Stay quiet, everybody," and like the loudest volume. Surely that would just make like a mass hysteria of creatures just going in. Like they would all freak out if they heard that, right? It seems really counterproductive. I know it's so you just can't help but think, that's weird, and then it likes to fill the film out when we're not. Our main characters are smart, right? They're on the ball, but everybody else around is an idiot. They're an annoying idiot. Someone in the middle of the street screaming for her husband at the top of her lungs. You know, after the rules have been established for 90% of the populace, and say it just feels a little bit tacky. And it's a shame because Joseph Quinn and Lupita Nyong'o are both super capable actors. And I don't think they do anything wrong in this film, but they're better than this film. And they could have. This could be good. This could be good, and I think that's the thing. And I think pretty soon on, 20 minutes into the film, it doesn't really. it peaks and then it doesn't really go anywhere. Just set piece to set piece, and your attention just, you kind of get a little bit more and more disconnected as it goes along. And by the end, it didn't offend me, the film, but at the end of the day, I was like, okay, why?
Yeah, why? That was the big one. I was like, why did you decide to make this film next? Like, why didn't you want to carry on the already established story with Emily Blunt? I'm not saying I loved part 2 because I didn't at all, but like, what was the reasoning for going back to this? And I know the first 2 made money, so I can only assume it's money, isn't it? It's like, wow, we can do it in New York and we can show a lot of aliens. Okay, cool. Well, if that's what you want, then that's what you get from A Quiet Place day one. But yeah, for a franchise that I like, after the first film was just like, this is incredible. I own the Blu-ray, I've watched it a few times. I do think it's a fantastic film. It just feels like we're kind of, I don't know, we've run it into the ground. It's only been 2 more films since.
Yeah, I mean, when we went to see that film the first time, the first one, and it really worked for me too. I don't really remember it being like super big or heavy on the marketing. Like, I didn't know what the creatures actually looked like until I'd seen the film. So the film was really good at blurring my sort of what my conception of what those creatures looked like, similar to like kind of the first time we see a xenomorph in the Alien franchise, but there is the last 20 minutes of the movie, you do get desensitized to that too once the reveal does happen. So, there's definitely a shelf life to that. These films kind of do rely on the suspense of the surprise, the reveal, and how you use a smaller setting. And once you expand it, the wheels just come off. My worst sort of like preoccupations of what this film was going to be just came true, and I want a fun ride. I want to be able to watch a film like this and feel, that was really spooky. I was really intense, and I emotionally drew to those characters, but everything just felt completely artificial. That's the thing.
Yeah. I agree.
It's a shame. It's not the worst film you'll ever see this year.
No.
But it's another one of these whatevers, it seems to be from these bigger production budget films at the minute. It just seems a little bit like a commonality, and but it's doing well in the box office. If I remember, I wasn't tracking this thing, but it seems to have.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know. They, to be honest, they're not usually like crazy budgets, are they? This one probably has the biggest, just for the amount of visual effects. But
sure.
They've always done consistently pretty good. So who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know for sure.
There you go. Quiet Place day one. I wouldn't stress about rushing to go see it.
No,
if you want to complete the
go watch it on day 30 when it's on VOD.
There you go.
All right, Chris, are you ready? I have taken over your trivia segment this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I wanted to do something Spider-Man related. You know I love Spider-Man. So I thought I'm going to quiz you on Spider-Man this time.
Okay. Make me look like the idiot this time.
Exactly. Say you're a fan, huh? Say you're a fan. Go on. Well, answer these 10 questions about Spider-Man 2. Are you ready?
Oh, God. Okay. Please. Please have mercy on us.
No, I think, they're not like super easy basic questions. It's not like, who played Peter Parker? There's a few of them are slightly deep cuts, but I think like having seen it within the last couple of days and being a fan, I'd say you should be okay. We'll see.
Okay.
Might not be a 10-10. We'll see. All right. Sorry, I'm building the pressure. I'm not
my legs.
in.
I'm actually I'm doing that thing where I put my knees into my together, when in and out, as if you're trying to finish a meal. It's too big.
I'm not usually in this position, so I'm going to take glee in it. Okay. All right. So, question number 1 on our Spider-Man 2 related quiz: what is the name of the famous pizza establishment that Peter Parker is fired from at the start of the film?
Oh my goodness! Yeah, I watched the movie 2 nights ago, and I can't. All I know is that 20 minutes delivery is a guarantee. It's not.
It's very famous. It's very. If you go to New York and you say, "I want a slice of pizza," this will be at the top of people's lists of famous establishments for New York pizza.
Has it got Joe in the title? Is it just called Pizza Joe's?
I'm not going to give you that, Chris.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry, man.
if you flipped it around, it'd be Joe's Pizza.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Go!
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give myself the point for that. It's
Okay.
it was an anagram of the right thing.
You were close. You were close. You were close. Yeah. If you a very famous establishment, apparently they have a few places. I'm hoping to go to New York soon. I'm going to make sure I go there.
Oh, you lucky get.
Heard it's not the best pizza. Apparently, it's not the best in New York, but
it's like whenever people go to like New York to get one of those, like when Harry Met Sally sandwiches or something, where you got to pay like $25 to eat the sandwich from the film.
Yeah, I think $25 is cheap these days. Bloody hell. Okay, question number 2. So, worried that Tobey Maguire's pre-existing back condition would cause him to become paralyzed during stunt work, Sam Raimi was looking to cast pretty early on in the production somebody else to play Peter Parker. He did obviously eventually go back on that decision, but who was he going to cast?
Right, I know the story about the back, and that always makes me laugh when I watch the film when he says, "Oh, my back," because that's the whole point. But was it Gyllenhaal? Why is that in my head? Yes, Gyllenhaal. Yeah.
Yep. You're correct. You're correct.
He's the only one that makes sense as well. You could guess that.
Which Gyllenhaal?
Maggie.
Wrong!
Yep, it's Jake Gyllenhaal.
Jake Gyllenhaal, yes, you can have that one. That is correct. Different kind of rumors flying around. Some people say he was actually cast early on and that 100% was going to replace Tobey Maguire. I think Gyllenhaal said he was only being considered. There was all kinds of stuff behind the scenes before this one took place. But I'm glad. I like Jake Gyllenhaal, but I'm glad Tobey Maguire was our Peter Parker for all 3 films.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, question number 3. What's the free gift that Aunt May tries to get from the bank?
Well, at least we still get the toaster. Actually, that only comes with the $300 deposit. So no.
See, I knew you'd be all right with some of these. Yes, it's the toaster.
Thank you.
Okay. What is the name of Dr. Octopus's wife?
Oh my God! Don't kill. Oh, you're gonna kill. Oh.
She has a pretty awful death as well. The glass shards coming towards her face always kind of freaked me out a little bit as a kid.
Is it? Is it Rosie or something like that?
I feel like I want to give you that because I think he does shorten it to Rosie, but it is Rosalie.
If it was me, I'd be like, no, you're wrong. It's either it's right or it's wrong, right? It's close, but I wouldn't give it to me.
Okay, well, you're not getting it. All right, this one's a little bit more deep cut, but you might know this one. All right. So, question number 5: in a deleted scene from the film, what unsuspecting character tries on the Spider-Man costume?
Unsuspecting character tries on the Spider-Man costume. To me, it would only make sense. I don't know the answer, but it would make sense that when J.K. Simmons, when the Daily Bugle gets a suit, somebody there would try it on. So I've just got to guess which one it would be. I'm going to guess it's Ted Raimi's character.
You would be wrong. You were very close, but it is J.K. Simmons who wears the Spider-Man suit. And I think
I would leave it to your taste just to do that, but okay.
I know. I think in the editor's cut, we see the scene. So I don't know if you've ever seen Spider-Man 2.5.
No, I know of it, but I've never watched it. Yeah.
It's not as good as the theatrical cut. But yeah, you do actually see J.K. Simmons in the Spider-Man costume, pretending to whip around his office. So yeah, it's very funny. You can watch the clip on YouTube. It is good. Okay. It is good. All right. So the film did win an Oscar. So question number 6: which Oscar did the film win?
Oh my goodness. What would this most? It would. I do not see it winning an acting category. Just for the type of film it's in. Wouldn't have won Best Picture, wouldn't have won Director, not writing. It's going to be something like technical. It's either going to be costumes or visual effects. I'm just going to kind of risk it here and say costumes.
You would be incorrect. It was Best Visual Effects.
Oh, for God's sake! I thought that was too obvious.
Oh.
Everyone I've got wrong, it's just been like a silly little mistake. Oh, damn!
All right. Well, you have a chance to make it 50% if you get the next 4 questions correct.
This is just deja vu of what I've done to you, so now I know what it feels like.
Yes, and now I'm starting to realize maybe it was a little bit harder than I thought. But there you go. I'm sorry about that.
No.
Question number 7. What is the name of J. Jonah Jameson's assistant, played by Elizabeth Banks?
I could tell you it was Elizabeth Banks, but I forgot. I totally have no idea.
Famous comic book character with a bob. In the very, very early Spider-Man comics, she is like the main love interest for like 2 issues.
But I only know Gwen Stacy is like.
He says her last name a lot. I'll give you one if you give me one of the names. First or last, I'll give it to you.
I have no idea. No idea.
Fair enough.
Blank.
All right, fair enough. I was trying to stall for you. Betty Brant.
Okay. Yeah, but now you say, I'm like, yeah, Betty, yeah. I remember him saying Betty. I would have got Betty eventually, but never would have got Brant.
He does say Miss Brant a lot. I don't know.
He says a lot of things though. That guy's fast.
He does say a lot of things. Okay. Question number 8. What other Marvel character's name is taken when the Bugle is thinking up names for Otto Octavius?
I know this one because I laughed. Doctor Strange.
Correct. That is correct. And it feels even weirder now that Sam Raimi has held a Doctor Strange film, right?
Yeah, it makes the joke work even better now, actually.
Exactly. It's like he knew.
Yeah.
Number 9. What is the final line that Mary Jane says to Peter at the end of the film?
Oh, go get him, Tiger.
Hell yeah. All right. I think that means you're on. Oh, no.
Now.
You've got 4. You've got 4, right? So I think if you get the next one, you've 50%ed the test, which I think is like a C. All right.
Pass. Okay.
It's not a pass. All right. No, it's a pass. All right. So, what type of cake does Ursula Diktovich offer Peter in his apartment when he's contemplating becoming Spider-Man again? What type?
A lovely scene in the film too. I really like this scene. It's a chocolate cake with a glass of milk.
Hey!
And then you see the cake in the next scene, and it's like, that's not a chocolate cake.
I did think the same thing. It has like a layer of chocolate icing, but it's just like a vanilla sponge.
White, yeah.
I guess if it has chocolate icing, I guess maybe you could get away with it.
Yeah.
Not a chocolate cake like we know it.
I feel like you were kind. I think like those ones I got right, as long as you were watching the film, I think you're okay. So, okay. I think if I did a little bit of homework, I might have maybe fared a little bit better. But
your homework was watching the film about 2 days ago, okay?
Okay.
But I do urge you to go watch J.K. Simmons in the suit. It's very funny.
Okay. I feel like I've seen it. Like now I'm like I can see it now in my head.
It does go viral every now and then.
Okay.
It comes back into the zeitgeist.
Like I was happy as long as I got 2. I'd be like, okay, at least I survived it. Like so, I'm happy.
There you go.
Thanks, Alex.
Spider-Man quiz.
So this is the section of the show where we catch up with our ongoing series, our blind spots on the Sight and Sound greatest films of all time list. We are slowly making our way down the list of films we haven't seen before. This week, we are on number 26, according to Letterboxd, which is the 1955 film, The Night of the Hunter. Night of the Hunter, it follows Robert Mitchum's serial killer preacher, who, after a short stint in prison, goes after his cellmate's family, whose kids are hiding the 10 grand that's gone missing. Directed by the actor Charles Laughton, this gothic Deep South thriller was his one and only film. Alex, what did you think of this supposed cinema classic?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd heard of this film prior to the list. I don't know about you, but this was kind of my first time seeing it and hearing about it, and it is a very good looking film.
That's it. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. Yeah, it
No,
is a good
no.
looking film.
It is incredibly good looking. So Charles Lawton kind of took on a lot of the stylistic choices that silent cinema had and
Hmm.
employed them into this obviously 1950s film, which is a little bit of a noir, a little bit of a thriller, quite gothic in places, almost like a
Hmm.
dark fairy tale.
Yeah.
All in this kind of deep south setting that was loosely based off of a real serial killer. But I'm pretty sure the real serial killer had only killed 2 people. Whereas
Right.
I'm not even sure that you would call that a serial killer. But yeah, obviously Robert Mitchum's priest character is on like his 25th by the time we start the film.
Okay.
And
Did
he's
you? Did you?
actively trying to find a widow with money because it's like God's calling or something like that. But yeah, like gorgeously shot, like the use of kind of shadow and sets and all this kind of stuff going on is great. I think that the clash of, taking it seriously but also being quite kind of old school Hollywood and quite corny in places, kind of those kind of thematic elements butt heads a little bit with each
Okay.
other. But I know that many people, potentially even yourself, Kris, love this film.
Yeah, I freaking love this film. Like, it is an understatement. I literally had one of those. We've been talking about films that have been disappointing us lately. Whenever you just sit down and watch something like this, it's just so almost life affirming is a little bit too hyperbolic, but I feel like it when I watch it. It's so great to watch something that reminds me why I love films so much, and specifically that decade of cinema. I'm a big Robert Mitchum fan. I love it whenever Robert Mitchum plays dangerous. I think there's just something about him. He's got this like brutish physicality, this blue collar guy thing, but also mixed with just this little hint of creepiness, where you just like I don't have like a pulse on who this guy is. It's just so beguiling. It's so interesting, and I saw at the beginning of the film that it was based on a novel. I didn't know it was based off a true incident that you mentioned. So I went in completely blind into this film. So I was just completely watching this story unravel. And you're right, it's film noir partly, but it unravels and becomes multi-genre as it goes along. It becomes a little mixture of hard-boiled, watching a story unfold. It's very, very simple, but it's just watching. I have no idea who this guy is, and yes, it does throw itself into the area of sentimentality. But I completely fell for it. I mean, I almost found myself on the verge of tears at time because I just thought it was such beautiful, beautiful filmmaking, and yeah, and the kids are great in this too. I think it's got this sort of Huckleberry Finn like America's storybook turn of the century sort of feel to it as well. Like, especially when we're on the raft and we got these really artificial set designs, which I love. I just feel it really plants you into this world. You can tell the barn in the backyard in the back's not real, and the background is like really heavily shadowed, but it's just got this real menacing but beautiful quality to it as well. And like he is scary as heck. I thought that Robert Mitchum just gives an all-time performance in this. And I know a lot of people feel like he doesn't quite work. A lot of people find him a little bit too much, but I think he leans into just the right amount.
Yeah, but I think he probably wouldn't be as iconic in this role if he didn't lean into it as much, because he is very loud in this, and he is very full on. But it does work. I think maybe a part of me was a little bit surprised that this turns into the kids' film more than his film. I thought we were going to be watching him as a bit of not even anti-hero, just watching it from the villain's perspective and hoping that he gets shafted at the end. But this turns very much into the film about the kids and them having to kind of escape his clutches and get away from his kind of evil whims and stuff. A little bit series of unfortunate events in a way. as he
That makes
schemes,
sense.
and they're the only ones that know, or at least the son is the only one that knows that this guy is bad news. But his, Robert Mitchum's able to kind of like weave his way into the family, and everybody thinks he's like this ideal preacher who's come in to help them all. So a little bit of that to it as well, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, there's like this scene where they've gone down the river and they've found refuge in a barn that they fall asleep in at night after escaping his clutches. And like he's being then the camera kind of cuts to him in a different scene, joining like this is Dust Bowl era. This is like set right during the Great American Depression. And you see him like in the sort of Grapes of Wrath setting where he's working on the field with other guys and he's preaching this, this rhetoric about the Lord and everything and what he claims to believe in. And then you think the kids are safe, and then they use this as a siren call for him throughout the film, where they use the hymn "Leaning on the Everlasting Arms," which is like a film, like a hymn that's used quite often in films. Like it's used in First Reformed to like a stunningly, heartbreaking effect. It's used in The End of True Grit to like a very beautiful contemplative effect. And here it's used as a horror siren. Like whenever the kids are asleep and they think, right, we finally got away from this guy. And he's in the backdrop over a hill, his silhouette on his horse singing this hymn. And there's just this eerie silence where he's like the xenomorph. He's like an alien. He's just like around the corner every time. Super, super unsettling. And I think the thing about him is it's not just like this guy's dangerous, but he seems to be enjoying it as well. He seems to like find glee out of, he's not just this guy who wants the 10 grand. He really enjoys being deplorable to all these people. And the loud performance is part of that. I mean, that's how he manipulates people. Everybody in the town, apart from the kids who know the situation, are in love with him. They all think he's the best thing that since sliced bread. He's a pillar of the community. He's this guy. Like any woman would want to marry this guy. Anyone would. And so it's and that's true for like a lot of serial killers in real life too. Like a lot of these people were quite flamboyant and over the top, and
charming,
hiding in plain sight. Yeah.
Oh,
he's so good. I really liked it. Yeah, when Lillian Gish comes into the film, the movie only gets better as this sort of widowed woman, I assume, that lives by herself and seems to have adopted kids from the street, comes across our two main kids and brings them in and looks after them. And Robert Mitchum comes knocking, and she knows this guy's bad news, and they have a showdown at the end of this film. Well, they talk about the hymn "Leaning on the Everlasting Arms." They have a showdown where they both sing the song, like duet the song, while he's waiting outside in the shadows and she's sitting with the shotgun. And it's both beautiful because that song is like very haunting. Like, I'm not religious myself, but that song I find very haunting because the implications of what that song means lyrically is like something somebody would sing before they die as a sort of thing, as a blanket of comfort. And it's also he's using it as a threat, to say like this is the end for you. And she's using it as like, this is my blanket for the children. And both of these things are going against each other. And it's so cool. I find it so moving. And just her maternal instincts just really made me root for these kids to kind of get through this whole thing. It's simple storytelling. Like, it's more simple than something you'd expect from something on the BFI list to be so high. But I just find it's just classic Hollywood filmmaking at its best. Monochromatic, beautiful, proper fairy tale storytelling, and the performances are just otherworldly. I fell in love with this song.
Yeah, I wish I'd fallen in love with it as much as you did. Like, I did really like it, but I do think there were a few moments that kind of just came off a little too corny, and I felt like the vibe was maybe like not meshing as well as it could have done. I think the film works better at the start than it does at the end, despite I like the visuals of watching, I can't remember her name with the shotgun.
Lillian Gish. Yeah.
Lillian Gish. But I do find like the whole ending where she's like, oh, those poor children, and all that kind of stuff. I was just like, I don't know if that works for me as well. But I will caveat it with saying I was very tired when I watched this. It was nice to watch on the projector. There is no doubt. So I've chucked it on the projector. And it was, like I was straight away stunned by like some of the visual elements, like things I hadn't seen before, especially with a film of this era, really going all out stylistically. So I was like really engaged with that. But I think the story and I know it's short, but it did feel like it just dragged on a little bit too long at times.
Yeah.
But I feel like it might be one of those films that if I watch it again, I'll probably appreciate it. But it'll probably be a moment before I watch it again, just because we've got so many films to watch at the moment. But
you're right. It does come out of
I can understand why people love it, and I can understand why you loved it. And I remember watching it thinking Kris is going to love this. So like it's not like I'm so blind to the fact that like I don't understand why you would like this film so much. I fully know why. It just didn't grab me in that moment. But yeah, I think it was a day after I'd come back from my holiday, and I just wanted to be in bed and watch something. And I saw that our next Sight and Sound film was 90 minutes. It was black and white. It was old Hollywood, and I thought, perfect. I love these kind of films. But it didn't maybe like grip me to the same extent some others have. But it's very good. It's very good. I wouldn't, I know some of these films which we come out of being like they're okay, and then we'd be like, I'm not sure if they deserve their place on the list, but I can see why this is on the list. Would I put it this far up the list? Maybe not, but I can see why it might be on there.
I guess I can understand how you could see that the movie's message does shift to being a story about defending and protecting and enhancing the lives of our children, which could be seen as being quite treacly. I guess I liked it because that's not very common in films from this era, where like kids usually are very like seen and not heard, or do what they're told. And it was quite nice to see a story that was so like seeing a character who was so unbelievably kind to these kids. And there's a moment at the end of the film where it's like, it's Christmas time, and they're all out of the woods, and she gives presents to the children, and some of the older kids that can afford to give her a present, and the young boy who survives this whole incident, he's too young to kind of afford anything. He goes into the kitchen, gets an apple, and wraps it in a kitchen towel and gives it to her. And the look on her face as they kind of exchange it melted my heart. It's such a real authentic kindness in this film. And yeah, she does just look at the camera at the end and say he will look after the children. But I don't know, it just felt so earned, and I like had a real ball in my throat. And like, it's just, you marry that with some god awful moments. What was the moment with where their mother is murdered in the car and she's just in the bottom of the river?
Yeah,
and it's like
a striking shot as well of her body, and it lingers just on her underwater for so long. Such a beautifully horrible shot.
Yeah, and the kindly drunken guy that lives on the riverbank, he befriends the children. He's a lovely guy, but he's burdened whenever he sees her image through the water, and that image through the water is so creepy. It's so cool. But I think the shock of that moment too, because you're like, up until that point, you didn't know what this guy was capable of. Like you knew he wasn't any good, but like just to cut to her being dead at the bottom of the river was like a mouth agape moment. I was like, my mouth was my jaw was on the bottom of the floor. I was like, I couldn't believe the movie had gone this steep so quickly. And I was there for the ride. Yeah, I completely get it. It depends how much you love the artificiality of this era. If you like that sort of old Hollywood quality, then you'll absolutely love this. I got what I came for and got more out of it. I love it. It's got to be one of the best films I've seen on this list. But yeah. Again, I can appreciate the points you made though, and understand why things that worked for me wouldn't quite work for you or somebody else. It's one of those.
I need to watch it again. A lot of people felt less so, bad feelings than I did back in the day when it came out, and that's why it was Charles Lawton's only film, because it was quite critically panned at the time. He never made another film. That was his one and only. And here it is, 80 years later, 75? I can't do maths. But yeah, one of the best films of all time.
Crazy that the guy, I was thinking that the whole time I was watching this, is like, this is not the film of somebody who's only made one film, well, I can only understand as somebody who was a very good actor who completely understood the process of filmmaking and was able to replicate that for his project. But yeah, what if that's your only film? Fair enough. I loved it.
Yeah, that was good. It was good. Well, Kris, that brings us pretty much to the end of this episode. Next week, well, unfortunately, there will be no next week. We're both at the Green Man Festival, so we're not going to have time to watch anything or record anything. So another little break, but then we're back to being a little bit more consistent. And we have plans to start the Ghibli angle, so that should be relatively imminent in terms of getting that off. And hopefully it will fill in some of the gaps where we need to take a break. So, Ghibli Angle's coming, people. Ghibli Angle's coming. But what films might we review in 2 weeks' time? Well, we got the new Alien film coming out.
Yeah, excited for that.
We've got Trap that's out at the moment, if we're going to get a chance to see that. I really want to see It Ends With Us, mainly because I've read the book. I'm intrigued. I didn't think the book was amazing, but I'm intrigued.
Well, I'll promise you, Alex, if you find the time to see It Ends With Us, if I find the time to watch it, you might find the time to watch Coraline. That's getting re-released too.
Coraline's getting a re-release. That's true. And then next on our Sight and Sound board is what's it called? The one with the donkey. Well, why am I only thinking of the one that came out 2 years ago? AO. It's got a very similar poster. I'll give you that. So it's Alhazard Balthazar. I'm probably butchering that, and we'll know more after we've seen it. But yeah, it's quite a famous poster, I think, with a young girl kind of cradling a donkey's head. So looking forward to seeing that one. And it's directed by Robert Bresson, who we saw his other film on the list last year, A Man Escaped, which I think we both enjoyed for the most part. So I remember enjoying that. Alhazard Balthazar is the next film on the list if we get to that one. So,
and I thought we escaped the animal cruelty.
Let's hope there isn't. But I'm sure we probably look like idiots because many people who have seen the film are probably going, "Oh no, you're gonna get some."
Okay, well, I'll still look forward to them.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we let's end the episode then. That has been the episode for this week. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or review. We do really appreciate it. And if you'd like to keep up to date with us, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Film Angle.
We also have a Film Angle playlist. If you want to listen to what we've been listening to, you can find that in the show notes. Be sure to catch us next week for more cinematic discussions. Goodbye.
See ya.
See you later.